The rain falls, voice of the heavy and woman he loves, unforgiving, washing over a sanctuary that has been transformed into a slaughterhouse, a washing over a man's sanctuary that has been stands. His slaughterhouse silhouette is framed by the dead, his eyes glowing with a cold, predatory light. But the monster falters. A cry pierces the silence, the sound of a child, and the desperate voice of the woman he loves. She is broken, horrific, a cry crimson. Light the left in this dark sound of a world child. Their son is safe, but the price of his life is written in the blood pooling on the floor. The man reaches out, a desperate hope flickering in his chest, but she knows the truth. The light is fading from her eyes, a final clasp of hands, a final anchor to a world she is already leaving behind. With her last breath, she whispers a plea, a request for their son to live a life far away from the shadows that claimed her. A smile faint and tragic, and then silence. The weight of her body settles against him, and the world grows a little colder. The grief is instantaneous, but it is quickly eclipsed by a burning, righteous fury. He turns toward the darkness, a weapon in hand. The hunt is no longer for survival, it is for retribution. Years pass. The scent of blood is replaced by the morning sun and the sound of a young boy's struggle. Young Isu is only 8 years old, but his father treats every day like a battle for survival. It is a Spartan upbringing, a grueling routine of sweat and discipline disguised as punishment for a schoolyard scuffle. Isu defends his actions with the fire of youth, unaware that his father is forging him into something more than a mere student. The father's gaze is unreadable behind his glasses. He has seen where violence leads, and he fears for the path his son might take. A lesson is delivered with the weight of experience. Never use strength for petty revenge. The training continues. No dinner until the quota is met. In this house, weakness is the only sin. Driven by hunger and a burgeoning will, the boy strikes, faster, stronger. The father watches, a silent sentinel over his son's evolution. Every lap, every punch, is a brick in the wall the father is building to protect Isu from the past. As evening settles, the intensity fades into a rare moment of peace. But a simple question from a child can cut deeper than any blade. Isu wants to know about the mother he never knew. The father hesitates. The memories are a minefield he isn't ready to cross. He offers only fragments, that she was beautiful, and that she loved him until the very end. To the world and to his son, he is just a driver, a man with a mundane job in a changing world. Isu teases him about AI taking his livelihood, little knowing the true nature of his father's work. A small, knowing smile. Some secrets are meant to be kept forever. Time flows like a river. The boy becomes a man, his strength now a force of nature that shatters the equipment meant to contain it. Isu has grown powerful, perhaps too powerful for the normal life his mother envisioned. He questions the purpose of it all, the training, the isolation, the lack of a future in the sun. But the answer arrives on the evening news. A name from the past, Isu Jin, the new chairman of the Chengdu group. The father's expression hardens. The shadows he ran from have finally stepped into the light. He cancels the night's training, a final meal perhaps before the storm breaks. They drive through the city, Isu enjoying a rare moment of normalcy with the man he looks up to. But the father's eyes are on the rearview mirror. He sees the wolves before they howl. The route changes. The atmosphere in the car shifts from warmth to a suffocating dread. Black cars swarm like vultures, closing in on their prey. The father stops the car. He steps out into the night, his posture shifting from a parent to a predator. He speaks of secrets, of the burdens parents carry to keep their children safe. Masked men emerge from the darkness, blades drawn, their intentions as sharp as their steel. They represent a grudge that has festered for decades, a debt that can only be paid in blood. They think they have trapped an old man and his son. Little do they know, they have stepped into the cage of a monster. The ambush begins, but it is over before the first drop of rain hits the pavement. The father reaches into the shadows of his own history, retrieving a weapon that has tasted the lives of hundreds. He moves with a grace that defies his age, a whirlwind of steel and precision. One by one, the assassins fall. They are not fighting a man, they are being erased by a legend. The ground is painted red once more, a grim echo of the wedding night so many years ago. He stands alone amidst the fallen, the tactical axe in his hand, a testament to his true identity. The stories were not exaggerations. The cleaner has returned. The air grows heavy with the metallic scent of blood. Edward stares, his breath hitching as his world shatters in a single brutal moment. His father, the man he thought he knew, has just cleaved a human being in two with a single, terrifying swing. From the shadows, the executioners emerge. Faceless men in suits, their identities erased behind cold mesh masks. To them, this isn't a family. It's a cleanup job for a single, high-value traitor. A sea of blades catches the moonlight as they rush forward. They expected a simple assassination, but the silence of the night is about to be broken by the screams of the dying. The old man moves like a demon unleashed. With a violent flash of steel, he carves a path through his would-be killers, turning the battlefield into a gallery of crimson. If they want his head, they'll have to pay for it in blood. The end of the life-night air is shattered by the visceral spray of crimson. In the darkness of the warehouse, a dance of death has begun. Father Adinsev moves with a death has begun terrifying, practiced grace. The axe in his hand is no longer a tool. Extension of it will a whirlwind of forged in steel and determination shadows. I. A fast whirlwind of darkness of the gray steel and brutal determination. A calculated dance of death has begun. Very movement is calculated. Their intent to end a numbers doing life little to slow his momentum. He lunges forward, a whirlwind of steel and determination. Every movement is calculated, every blow intended to end a life. He pauses for a heartbeat, his grip tightening on the handle. The weight of the situation settles on his shoulders, but his eyes remain fixed on the path ahead. The cacophony of battle rises as he carves through the next wave. He is a man possessed, a guardian standing between his son and the abyss. They are surrounded. A sea of suits and blades looms in the dim light, their presence a suffocating weight. Isu Jin, the father, speaks, his voice steady despite the carnage. I will explain everything later. For now, you must listen. Isu Jin can only stare at the man he thought he knew. The sweat, the blood, the cold intensity. It's a mask he never expected to see. Stop thinking, his father commands, his silhouette sharp against the chaos. And just run. The onslaught continues. The father throws himself back into the fray, clearing a path through the wall of enemies. A devastating swing sends the attackers reeling. He is a force of nature, a storm that refuses to be quelled. Isu Jin finds his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The world he knew has been replaced by a nightmare of iron and bone. With a final, desperate shove, the father creates an opening. The air grows heavy with the scent of ozone and iron. Go! The shout echoes through the rafters. Isu Jin sprints toward the exit, the shadows of the masked men hot on his heels. He looks back for a fleeting second, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. His father stands alone, a solitary figure of defiance against the encroaching tide. For a moment, the violence fades into the background. Silence greets them in the small reprieve of a hallway. Isu Jin's breath comes in ragged gasps. His mind is a kaleidoscope of questions, each one more terrifying than the last. The father reaches out, the warrior momentarily replaced by the parent. Son, are you hurt? Isu Jin shakes his head, unable to find the words. The man standing before him is a stranger wearing his father's face. Good, we have to move, the father says, his eyes scanning the perimeter. They won't stop until we're gone. He points toward the escape route, a plan already unfolding in his mind. A self-driving car waits below, a lifeline in a sea of death. But what about you? Isu Jin asks, his voice trembling. The fear of losing the man he just rediscovered is overwhelming. No buts, the father replies, his gaze hardening. The mission comes first. The survival of his legacy is paramount. Isu Jin gulps, the reality of their situation sinking in. This is not a dream. This is his life now. Suddenly, a new presence emerges from the gloom. The leader of the masked men steps forward, his voice dripping with ancient malice. Old rat, the antagonist sneers. He promises a death more painful than anything the father has ever known. Run now. The father bellows, turning to face the new threat as Isu Jin disappears into the stairwell. The clash of steel rings out once more. The father grinds his teeth against the pressure, his strength beginning to wane. It is a desperate struggle. The father fights not for victory but for time. Every second he stands is a second his son gains. He is a titan refusing to fall, even as the world crumbles around him. Inside the stairwell, Isu Jin's mind is a void. The shock has stripped away everything but the primal urge to survive. What was his job? He wonders, his hand trembling on the cold metal of the door. Who is he? He tries to pull himself together, to focus on the task his father gave him. Survival is the only thing that matters now. He looks at the blood on his hands, his father's blood. The realization of the violence required to keep him safe is a bitter pill to swallow. Was the man he loved for years just a character, a murderer, a criminal? The questions haunt the silence. Back in the hall, a blade finally finds its mark. The father staggers, his breath hitching as the cold steel pierces his side. He retaliates with a final, savage blow, but the damage is done. The invincible guardian is bleeding. Isu Jin hears the struggle from beyond the door. A muffled cry of "Dad" dies in his throat. Agent 101. The enemy speaks the name like a curse. The secret is out, the past finally catching up to the present. The father looks at a faded memory of a promise to give his son a life away from this darkness. He realizes now that he cannot keep that promise, not in the way he hoped. His hand slips into his pocket, his fingers finding a small, familiar object, a lighter, a simple tool for a final, devastating purpose. "I'll make this place my grave," he whispers to the empty air. He will end this legacy of violence on his own terms. Isu Jin reaches the car, looking back at the building that holds his father and his past. "I'm sorry." The father's final thought drifts through the ether. "I couldn't protect you to the end." Then the world turns to fire. A massive explosion rips through the warehouse, a roar of flame that consumes the shadows and lights the way for the survivor. The shadows of the underworld are deep, and within them, a monster smiles. He looks down at the boy's file with a predatory hunger. To kill him now would be a waste of a perfectly good hunt. Outside, the news reports on the factory explosion. A tragedy to some, but a calculated cover-up to those who know the truth. Remains in his tragedy to some hospital bed. His calculated eyes cover up to those who close it, but his mind is far from rest. He is drowning in a sea of confusion, the weight of his father's secrets pressing down on his chest. "I knew you were faking it." A voice cuts through the silence. Soyeon stands there, unyielding and observant. She looks at him with a mixture of pity and old affection. A face from a life that feels like a distant memory. It has been 10 years, perhaps 15, and time has a way of eroding even the strongest bonds of childhood. She laughs softly, remembering how he once dreamed of a simple life as a traffic officer. Instead, she became the one chasing shadows, catching the eye of the police captain with her relentless grip. They were just kids then, trading kicks in the dojo until one of them cried and the other laughed. But the nostalgia is a thin veil. She asks the question he isn't ready to answer. What truly happened to his father? Isu looks away, the truth a jagged piece of glass he cannot yet bring himself to touch. He remembers the thugs and the sudden violence, but the why remains hidden in the dark. Soyeon's expression softens. She isn't here as a detective, but as a friend who is terrified for his safety. She promises to return every single day, a small anchor in a world that has suddenly gone mad. As she turns to leave, a sudden rattle at the door stops her heart. She tries to hide her blush, her worry manifesting as a nervous energy she can't quite contain. The hospital staff watch her with cold, unblinking eyes, and the atmosphere begins to shift. She rushes back into the room, her instincts screaming that she shouldn't leave him alone for even a second. She brings a peace offering, fried chicken, a small piece of the world that still makes sense. Isu eats in silence, the simple act of chewing a temporary shield against the rising tide of his fear. She watches him closely, seeing the boy he used to be beneath the trauma of the previous night. Is he truly okay, she wonders, or is he just wearing a mask for her sake? The silence between them grows heavy with the things they cannot say. Everything is still so confusing, and the grief is a weight he cannot yet lift. It all feels like a nightmare, until the memory of the blood hits him all over again. What if they come back? The men in the masks won't stop until he is found. The door slides open and a nurse enters, her face a blank slate behind a surgical mask. The lock clicks, a sound that should mean privacy, but here it signals a trap. Isu looks up, and for a heartbeat, time stands still. This is no ordinary nurse. A scalpel gleams in the light as the assassin lunges with lethal, silent precision. Soyeon reacts with the speed of a hunter, intercepting the strike before it can find its mark. The assassin is a whirlwind of blades and malice, desperate to finish the job at any cost. A bone-jarring impact follows as Soyin fights for her life, and for the boy behind her. Isu watches in absolute horror. The violence has found him even in the light of day. The assassin's eyes are wide and filled with a manic, murderous glee. Soyin snarls, her own strength surprising the intruder. She will not let him die. With a roar of effort, she slams the assassin into the floor to end the struggle. She gasps for air, her eyes darting around the room. Who sent this woman? I'll take her to the station, she says. But Isu knows the danger is far from over. No, he whispers, grabbing her arm with trembling hands. We need to leave, now. They burst into the hallway, racing for the only exit they can find. Just come with me, he shouts over the pounding of his own frantic heart. If the killers have made it this far, the police are no longer enough to protect them. These people are monsters. They would hurt anyone to get to him, even Soyin. They reach the stairwell, but a massive shadow falls over them, blocking their path. Isu is thrown back by a sudden, brutal blow that steals the breath from his lungs. The assassin from before leaps again, a shadow in the dim, red light of the stairs. Soyin is pinned to the ground, the weight of a monster holding her down. The bald man from the shadows steps into the light, a cruel grin stretching across his face. He complains about the order he was given. To him, this slaughter is just a chore. He looks at Soyin's eyes and reaches for his blade. He wants to take them. A crack echoes through the stairwell as Isu finally snaps. He is no longer the victim. Get your filthy hands off her. The air grows heavy and fate has finally arrived. But the echoes through the shadows are stairwell. Brutal snatches him from the air final. Eyes burn with a brutal cold, unyielding fury. In this moment, he is no longer just a boy. He is a shield. But the echoes through the shadows are stairwell reaching back. Snatches him from the air, cutting his momentum short. Looms over him brutal, a mountain of muscle and malice. He squeezes and the world begins to fade. The sound of straining bone fills the silence. Isu gasps for air that will not come. But little did the monster know, Isu had a sting of his own. A hidden taser erupts, sending a jagged bolt of lightning through the giant's spine. The air grows heavy as the man refuses to fall. He stands, his eyes glowing with an unnatural, augmented light. Isu doesn't hesitate. He swings the fire extinguisher with every ounce of desperation he possesses. Finally, the mountain topples. A heavy thud, then silence. Isu stands amidst the wreckage of his life, his fists clenched tight. These are the men who murdered his father, and they are far from finished. Soyin places a hand on his head, her voice a steady anchor in the storm. She is a cop, and she will not leave him to face this darkness alone. Her resolve is absolute. She has seen enough tragedy for one lifetime. They seek refuge in the shadows of a hospital gym, a temporary sanctuary, or so they hope. The building stands tall against the twilight, a fortress of glass and steel. Inside, the silence is deafening. Soyin watches the door, the weight of her choice settling on her shoulders. She tries to maintain her composure, but the fear is a cold knot in her stomach. Who are these people? A syndicate so vast they can send dozens of killers for a single soul. She looks at an old photo of Isu's father, a man who lived in the shadows, training his son for a war they never saw coming. The phone vibrates, a herald of bad news. The suspects she captured are gone, vanished from police custody as if they were ghosts. The peace is shattered. Glass rains down like diamonds as a figure bursts through the window. Found you. The words are a death sentence whispered in the dark. They are surrounded. Masked figures emerge from the night, their presence a suffocating weight. A blade whizzes through the air, a silver streak of lethal intent. A woman in a surgical mask steps forward, her eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. The giant has returned, and this time he isn't holding back. A blond man watches from the periphery, his smile more terrifying than any weapon. To him, this is merely a game. Why? Isu screams into the void. At least give me a raisin. The masked woman lunges. She moves with a fluid, mechanical grace that defies nature. A flash of steel, a spray of crimson. The dance of death has begun. Isu staggers, the sting of the blade opening a jagged wound across his cheek. He strikes back with a desperate kick, but it's like hitting a wall of iron. Another blade finds its mark. A sickening shank echoes in the small room. He is being torn apart, piece by piece, by an enemy he cannot understand. Soyin cries out, her own blood staining her sleeve as the blond man fires from the shadows. She raises her weapon, her hands trembling but her eyes fixed. It's over. A shot rings out, but it isn't hers. Soyin collapses. The light in the room seems to dim as she hits the floor. The blonde man lowers his smoking gun. He didn't come here to kill the cops, not yet. The giant stands over Isu, a shadow that blots out the sun. Isu looks up, his vision blurring, his heart hammering against his ribs. Every breath is agony. Every muscle screams for him to give up. The giant raises a fist like a sledgehammer. Blame your parents for this. In the darkness of his mind, a memory flickers. His father standing tall, demanding excellence. Something inside Isu snaps. The pain recedes, replaced by a cold, white-hot clarity. His eyes ignite. I can't die now. The words are a vow etched in blood and fire. The giant hesitates. He sees the change. He feels the shift in the air. Isu moves, not like a boy but like a storm. One strike fueled by a lifetime of hidden training. The giant falls for the last time. Isu stands victorious, but as he looks at the broken man at his feet, he knows the real war has only just begun. The giant falls. Body of his did it enemy, gasping for air as the words adrenaline barely begins to fade, escaping his lungs. Body of his did it, he whispers, but victory tastes like ash. But victory tastes like ash. He turns to see Soyin trembling, her strength failing her, mess of her crimson strength failing her. The cost of this encounter is written in the blood staining her skin. From the shadows, a new nightmare emerges. This is no mere grunt. This is a predator who has been watching from the dark. The man smiles, a cold, hollow expression. He speaks of Isu's father as if he were an old ghost he once admired. He looms over them, the weight of his presence making the very air grow heavy. He cannot let this slight go unpunished. Isu raises his fists. He is broken, exhausted, but his spirit refuses to yield. The gap between them is a chasm. The man approaches with the casual gait of someone stepping over a nuisance. Then he moves, a blur of motion that defies the eye. Isu barely has time to register the threat. He is too fast, far too fast. A strike lands, then another. Each blow is a hammer to the soul. With a sickening thud, Isu is sent crashing into the floor. He gasps for breath, his vision swimming as the world tilts on its axis. The man mocks him, surprised that the boy is still conscious after such a brutal display. He draws a blade. The steel sings a song of cold finality, but he doesn't aim for Isu. He holds up a phone, framing Soyin in the lens. He wants to record her despair. He promises to end her pain, his voice dripping with a sadistic kind of mercy. The blade flashes, a cruel, sweeping arc intended to scar more than just the flesh. Blood splatters the floor. Isu has thrown himself into the path of the strike, shielding her with his own body. The man's patience shatters. He begins a relentless assault, his blade dancing across Isu's back. Isu takes it all. Every cut, every sting. He is a wall of meat and bone standing between Soyin and the end. The man raises his sword for the final stroke. Silence settles over the room. Suddenly, the air screams. A heavy axe bites into the sword, sparks flying as the execution is halted. The man staggers back, his eyes wide with confusion. An axe here. 3 figures stand at the threshold, framed by the moonlight. They carry the weight of those who have seen too much. Leave them alone, the leader commands. His voice is a low rumble that demands obedience. The blonde man snarls, demanding to know who would dare interfere with the chairman's business. A woman from the group moves with lethal grace, her own blade clashing against the man's steel. She smiles, a dangerous glint in her eyes. They are not here to talk, they are here to clean. The leader looks at the blonde man with pure disdain. He offers a choice: leave now or die here. In the confusion, Isu finds one last spark of defiance. He lunges forward, his fist connecting with the man's jaw. The predator falls. The blonde man hits the ground, his arrogance finally silenced by the boy he underestimated. Isu collapses, his body finally giving out as the strangers move in. The leader kneels beside him, placing a hand on his head. There is a strange, ancient familiarity in the gesture. The blonde man retreats into the night, his parting words a promise of future vengeance. "We'll protect you," the leader says, "if you come with us." He assures Isu that Soyin will be cared for. An ambulance is already on the way. He reveals the truth that changes everything. They were old friends of Isu's father. Isu looks at them, his eyes searching for a reason to trust. Finally, he nods. Elsewhere, the city lights glitter like cold diamonds. In a high-rise office, a celebration is underway. The new chairman Jin basks in the glow of his appointment, surrounded by sycophants and champagne. He laughs, mocking the predecessor who took too long to die. He thinks he is untouchable. A message arrives, a video from the field. He expects a report of success, but as the video plays, his smile begins to wither. He sees the face of the boy he thought he had broken. Isu stares through the screen, his eyes burning with a red, vengeful light. The hunt has only just begun. Isu opens his eyes to a world of sterile white and hushed whispers. The fog of unconsciousness begins to lift, replaced by the sharp sting of reality. A face leans in unfamiliar, yet strangely tethered to his past. He is safe for now, but the air in this room is thick with secrets. A ghost from another life, father who is no longer there to yet protect him. Chengdo, name that, but the air in this taste's room is like ick thick in with Isu's secret's mouth. He settles on speaks of Isu's Chengdo's shoulders like lead. They were the ones who took everything from him while he stood by, helpless and small. Your father was a great man, the captain says, his voice a low rumble. And he was their greatest enemy. A heavy silence follows. A moment of shared mourning for a man whose legacy is now a target on his son's back. The offer is simple. Join them and find the vengeance he craves. But Isu looks at the faces around him and feels only a cold, gnawing distrust. He chooses the harder path. He will walk alone, mending his own wounds and fighting his own battles, no matter the cost. The pharmacy door closes behind him, the chime of the bell sounding like a final goodbye to safety. He steps out into a soul he does not recognize, a labyrinth of concrete and shadow where the sun feels distant and cold. He is a stranger in his own city, standing on the edge of a precipice he didn't know existed. Memories drift back to him, unbidden. A father's voice, steady and grave, pointing toward the horizon. He called it the sewer, a place where the city's light fails to reach and where its darkest sins are buried. Little did Isu know, he wasn't just looking at the sewer. He was standing right in the heart of it. But he is not the only one walking these narrow streets. In the shadows, the wolves are gathering, their eyes fixed on a digital bounty. Isu catches a glimpse of them, men with hollow eyes and iron bars, hunting for the boy worth more than his weight in gold. Fear, cold and sharp, pricks at his skin. He is the prey and the hunt has already begun. He moves, a desperate scramble for survival as a rusted blade whistles through the space where his head had been a heartbeat before. He runs, his breath coming in ragged gasps, the footsteps of his pursuers echoing like a drumbeat of doom. He turns into a dead end, the brick walls closing in like the jaws of a trap. There is nowhere left to hide. His heart hammers against his ribs. Can he fight them? Or will this alley be the place where his story ends? A small hand reaches out from the darkness, pulling him into the safety of a hidden doorway just as the hunters roar past. A child, small, silent, and watchful. In this den of thieves, Isu finds a momentary ally in the most unlikely of places. The boy gestures for Isu to follow, moving through the cluttered shadows with the grace of a rat in the walls. He points toward a door, a promise of sanctuary. Isu hesitates, then follows, desperate for any port in this storm. But as the door swings open, the relief he felt turns to ice. This is no sanctuary. The room is filled with the very men he was running from. And at the center of it all stands the boy, his innocence revealed as a mask. The betrayal is a physical blow. In the sewer, even a child knows the price of a human life. They look at him not as a boy, but as a big catch, a ticket out of the filth they call home. The air grows heavy with the scent of impending violence. They want him pretty for the delivery, but Isu has other plans. He looks at the ground, the realization shattering his last remnants of hope. In this city, he has no one to rely on but himself. In that moment, the fear vanishes, replaced by a white-hot spark of defiance. If he is to die here, he will not go quietly. He lunges forward, a blur of motion and desperation. He will struggle, he will fight, he will survive. The sewer may be where secrets are dumped, but today it will be a battlefield. It is kill or be killed. The sound of a brutal impact shatters the air. Violence has arrived, uninvited and unforgiving. A face contorts in a mask of agony as blood sprays across the dim light. The struggle is no longer a game, it is survival. Behind the safety of a locked door, Sihyun catches his breath. He wonders why the world seems so determined to crush him. Outside Sihi, he gathering. Why the unworld act seems so determined to crush him, with a cold, predatory light in the middle of the night. Greed is a poison that rots the soul from within. Even among allies, a knife is always ready for a back. The old leader is discarded like refuse. A new, more ruthless shadow takes command of the hunt. Sehyun listens to the footsteps. The station, once a sanctuary, has become a tomb. He looks at his hands. What can a boy do against men who have forgotten the meaning of mercy? He hurls a heavy locker down the stairs. A desperate gamble to buy a few more seconds of life. The crash echoes through the halls, followed by a scream of pain. The hunt has truly begun. They are coming for him now, driven by the scent of a bounty and the thrill of the kill. A hand clamps down on his shoulder. The trap is sprung, and the rat is caught. But this rat has teeth. Sehyun strikes back with a ferocity that catches the hunter off guard. The thug looms over him, axe raised high. He demands a trophy to prove his success. Sehyun dodges, the blade whistling past his ear. Death missed by a mere heartbeat. From the rooftop, the world looks cold and indifferent to the blood being spilled below. The thugs smirk, viewing the loss of their own comrades as nothing more than one less hand in the pot. Sehyun remembers the faces of those who came before. The weight of their sacrifice settles on his shoulders. Face reality, kid, they sneer. In this world, you are either the hunter or the prey. To be on a conglomerate's blacklist is to be a ghost. There is no hiding from the reach of the powerful. They laugh at his defiance, certain that the end is near. But Sehyun clenches his fist. The years of hellish training weren't for nothing. They were for this moment. He looks into the abyss and finds that he no longer fears the fall. This was always his fate. He moves with a grace born of desperation. A single, fluid motion that paints the air red. Another strike finds its mark. The prey has become the predator, and the hunters are beginning to feel the chill of fear. "You little bastard!" They scream, their confidence crumbling into a frantic rage. Sehyun looks at them with eyes that have seen too much. He is no longer the boy they thought they knew. The thugs freeze. Something is wrong. The air has grown heavy with a new, suffocating pressure. Sehyun stands his ground, blocking a massive blade with nothing but raw strength and iron will. Confusion turns to terror. This isn't what they were told. This isn't a normal target. Suddenly, a new voice cuts through the chaos. A woman stands in the moonlight, watching the carnage with a bored expression. She critiques his form, noting the traces of boxing in his sloppy, desperate moves. She has been there since the beginning, a shadow following a shadow. "Finished with your tantrum?" she asks. Her presence carries more weight than all the thugs combined. Sehyun looks at his trembling hands. He realizes how small he truly is in this vast, cruel world. The ignorance of his past self is a bitter pill to swallow. He needs more than just instinct to survive. He looks her in the eye, his resolve hardening into steel. "Teach me how to take down Chengdo." The city hums with a deceptive peace, a facade of normalcy that hides the rot beneath. But for those within the storm, the air is already growing heavy. Voice is a facade of steady normalcy that hides the rot beneath. The air is already detachment, as he growing heavy orders his wounded officer to remain in the hospital. She sits in the sterile silence, the weight of her helplessness pressing down as the line goes dead. Elsewhere, the shadows of the sewer yield a grim discovery, a blood-stained reality that the world isn't ready to face. A junior officer pleads for justice, showing the evidence of a brutal massacre, but the chief silences him with a sharp gesture. Some truths are too dangerous to uncover, and some areas are better left to the dark. The young officer stands frozen, the silence of the station echoing the abandonment of the victims. Amidst this growing dread, a new path opens. Jimin Yu steps forward, her gaze cool and calculating. She isn't here for pleasantries. She has orders to follow and a new recruit to mold. With a sharp introduction, the boundaries are set. Questions must wait. The mission is all that matters now. Our protagonist stands ready, the fire of vengeance burning behind his eyes. He will do whatever it takes to bring the giants down. The conversation shifts to the past, to the ghost of a legend. His father, a man who once served the enemy, only to become their greatest nightmare. They carry on his cause now, a small flame of resistance against an all-consuming shadow. The briefing is cold and pragmatic. In the field, there are no safety nets. He accepts the terms without hesitation. The time for fear has long since passed. Introductions follow as the team reveals itself. Jin Beek, the man leading them into the fire. Then there is Hana Yu and Jun Hwang, comrades bound by a shared enemy and a dangerous purpose. Even their doctor, Yang Hyun Lee, watches with a weary eye. They are a family forged in the dark. The clock is ticking. At 9 p.m., the wolves will begin their hunt. The command is given. Every player moves to their designated position on the board. The map of Seoul is a battlefield of greed. Chengdo's influence spreads like a virus, seeking to choke the life out of the city. Their method is simple: buy the land for nothing, crush the weak, and profit from the ruins. The night air chills as the first cars approach. The operation has begun. Weapons are readied in the gloom. The weight of the choice settles on their shoulders. They watch from the heights as the enemy arrives to claim what isn't theirs. The roar of engines shatters the quiet of the street, a herald of the violence to come. Inside the van, the thugs prepare. To them, this is just another payday. They are paid to spread fear, to remind the common folk who truly owns the streets. At a local bar, the owner's son stands his ground, unaware of the storm at his door. The lead thug enters with a sneer, his presence a poison in the room. Defiance meets a cold, jagged smile. The air grows thick with the scent of impending blood. Then the violence erupts, brutal, sudden, a display of power meant to break the spirit. A blade finds its mark. The screams of the innocent are met only with laughter. The thugs revel in the chaos, believing themselves the masters of this night. But a new shadow falls across the alleyway, paced, intentional. A stranger arrives, his voice a calm ripple in a sea of madness. The thugs turn, their arrogance blinding them to the predator in their midst. In a heartbeat, time stands still. A flash of steel, a spray of crimson. The hunter becomes the hunted. Jimin Yu stands over the fallen, her eyes cold and unforgiving. This isn't just a mission, it's karma. The city night is never truly silent. Beneath the hum of neon lights, a different kind of darkness creeps through the narrow alleys. Gang beneath the hum of neon lights believe they own the different pavement they kind of walk on. They claim to be kings, but their throne is built on the fear of the weak. From the shadows, two figures watch, Jimin and Isu. To them, this isn't a tragedy, it's just another day on the job. The violence is sloppy, unrefined, a brutal display of power without purpose. An innocent man, bloodied and broken, gasps for air. He is a victim of a world that has no room for the stubborn. The gang leader smiles, a predator savoring the hunt. He wants more than just blood. He wants a signature, a surrender. But the man refuses to break. He has poured his life into this building, and he will not let it go for a pittance. Patience wears thin. The air grows heavy as a club is raised, ready to silence the man's defiance forever. But the execution is interrupted. Jimin and Isu step into the light, their presence alone shifting the gravity of the room. The thugs sneer, unaware that they are no longer the most dangerous things in this alley. Jimin reaches out, a cold calm settling over her features. She has a job to do, and she intends to be efficient. The sound of steel unsheathing cuts through the air. A new blade, hungry for its first taste of the night. In a blur of motion, the world shatters. One swing, fast and final. The arrogance of the gang is severed in an instant. Silence falls. The remaining thugs can only stare, their breath hitching in their throats as they realize the scale of the monster they've provoked. Jimin looks at her weapon with a frown. It wasn't as clean as she hoped. Even in the midst of slaughter, she seeks perfection. Her eyes glow with a terrifying intensity. She isn't just fighting, she is judging them. She stands tall, the weight of her presence looming over the survivors like a death sentence. The dance continues. More blood, more steel, more precision. She moves like a ghost through the red mist. The leader falls, his bravado replaced by a primal, shaking terror. The hunter has become the hunted. Jimin towers over him, her shadow stretching long across the floor. She has one question, and his life depends on the answer. He can only gape in horror. In this moment, everything he believed about his own power has been utterly destroyed. The scene shifts to the high rises of the city, where the sun shines on a different kind of predator. Men in suits discuss business plans as if they aren't deciding the fates of thousands. To them, people are just numbers on a spreadsheet. They plot to leak classified information, a betrayal that will ripple through the halls of power. A phone call is made. The wheels of a much larger machine are beginning to turn. Back at the facility, the cleaners examine the aftermath. They find a sensor implanted in a tooth, a fail-safe for those who know too much, a microphone in the neck. These gang members weren't just thugs, they were monitored assets. The truth begins to emerge. The Red Serpents are backed by Chengdo, a corporate giant with blood on its hands. Isu and Jimin are given their next objective, a mission into the heart of a redevelopment zone. The boss gives his orders. They aren't going in with guns blazing. They are going in to secure a person of interest. Jimin sighs, the weight of the upcoming work already settling on her shoulders. She hates the grind, but she never misses a beat. They arrive at the site. The sun beats down on a neighborhood that has been marked for death. Jimin explains the cruel reality. Chengdo cuts the water and power, starving the residents until they have no choice but to leave. This is where the desperate make their last stand, clinging to the ruins of their homes. And the Red Serpent Gang is coming to finish what the corporation started. Isu looks on, his heart heavy. He calls it what it is, plain evil. Jimin warns him not to get sympathetic. In their line of work, emotions are a luxury they cannot afford. As the sun sets, the air grows cold. The shadows lengthen, and the tension becomes almost unbearable. The gang arrives, charging into the streets with fire and steel. They have come to clean the streets of the very people who live there. Chaos erupts. Flames lick the sky as the thugs unleash their mindless rage on the helpless. The leader urges them on, his mind already on his next meal, indifferent to the suffering he's causing. Jimin identifies the target, a redhead in the crowd. The objective is clear. They wait for the perfect moment. They are ghosts in the machinery of war, waiting for the guard to drop. A mother huddles on the ground, shielding her child. She begs for mercy, but these men have none. A bat is raised high, a brutal blow aimed at a defenseless woman. Time seems to stop. Jimin prepares to move. The line has been crossed and the cleaners are ready to act, but Isu is faster. He steps in, blocking the strike with a resounding clang. The rookie has seen enough and the fight has only just begun. The plan was simple. A surgical strike, alley, a clean extraction, and then instructions are silenced. In the dim light of the alley, the instructions are clear. Remove the device, capture the target, and vanish into the night. But the air grows heavy with a warning. One mistake, one moment of impulse, and the shadows will swallow them whole. Chaos of the and the battlefield shadows erupts without will mercy. Surprise flickers across the faces of the locos. They did not expect a storm to descend upon their doorstep. Anger flares. The carefully laid plan is already beginning to fray at the edges. He moves, a blur of motion amidst the violence, but the weight of the situation is starting to press down. From the back, the leader watches with a cold, detached amusement. To him, this is merely a nuisance. A strike whistles through the air, fast, brutal. The dance of death has truly begun. Confusion turns to rage. The locos realize they are not dealing with mere amateurs. She moves like a phantom, her blade carving a path through the darkness with terrifying precision. They swarm her, driven by desperation and the primal urge to survive. Amidst the spray of blood, he realizes the grim reality of his situation. This is no longer a game. The tide is turning. The leader's smirk begins to fade as his men are cut down like wheat before a scythe. Panic creeps into the ranks. The invincible locos are being pushed back into the very shadows they call home. Fear takes root. Even the most hardened soul trembles when faced with an unstoppable force. Every clash of metal is a heartbeat in this frantic struggle for dominance. He lunges forward, driven by a desperate need to finish what he started. But the target is no novice. He meets the assault with a cold, calculated defense. Questions are asked in the heat of battle, but the only answers provided are the sounds of labored breathing and clashing steel. A sudden impact. The world tilts as the reality of pain sets in. She screams for him to move, her voice a desperate anchor in the rising tide of violence. He sprints, his lungs burning, chasing the ghost of a victory that seems to be slipping away. The target retreats into the narrow corridors, his arrogance still clinging to him like a shroud. He strikes from the blind spot, a final, desperate gamble to end the chase. But the target slips through his fingers, a master of evasion in his own right. A flash of steel, a spray of crimson. The price of failure is always paid in blood. A mocking smile. Little did he know, his arrogance would be his undoing. The strike lands, but it is not the end. It is merely the beginning of the final act. He falls. The weight of his choice settles heavily on his shoulders as the world goes dark. The target stands over him, a predator savoring the final moments of the hunt. Frustration boils over. He is too slow, too sloppy, and the realization shatters his resolve. Then from above, a shadow descends. Cheetah has arrived and the air itself seems to freeze. One move, one breath. The target is pinned before he can even register the threat. She stands victorious, her presence looming over the fallen target like a goddess of war. Later, the sting of her words is sharper than any blade. He was a liability, a ghost of the professional he was meant to be. He clenches his fist, the silence of the room echoing his own inner turmoil. He needs to be better. He has to be a memory of power, a vision of what he could become if he finds the right path. In the quiet of the training hall, a new figure emerges, radiating a different kind of strength. He approaches her, his voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at his heart. He asks for the one thing he lacks, the skill to survive the world he has stepped into. She looks at him, a knowing smirk playing on her lips. The journey is far from over. Elsewhere, in a room bathed in neon and malice, the news of the failure reaches the ears of the one who pulls the strings. The boss sits in the shadows, his presence a heavy weight that demands absolute obedience. A final chilling command is given. A new target is marked. And so, the hunter becomes the hunted once more. The training hall echoes with the rhythmic strike of wood against wood. Isu lunges forward, his movements raw and undisciplined. Every flaw. She is an undisciplined predator in a world of prey, and today she is the teacher. A sharp crack rings out. In an instant, Isu's momentum is shattered by a single, well-placed strike to the head. He single collapses, strike to the head, clutching his head as the sting of failure sets in. Precision, she reminds him, is the difference between life and death. She stands over him, her voice calm yet unyielding. A weapon is not a toy to be swung wildly, but a surgical tool for the finishing blow. Despite the brutality of the lesson, a playful smile touches her lips. She demands respect, but she also demands to be called Nuna. But the playfulness vanishes in a heartbeat. The air grows heavy as she warns him. In their world, slacking off is a death sentence. Isu looks up, the fire in his eyes reignited. He understands now. The path ahead is paved with pain and he must walk it. Elsewhere in the cold grip of an interrogation room, a man sits bathed in a single, unforgiving light. The silence is deafening. The tools of the trade are laid bare. A pair of pliers, a cold stare. The message is clear. The truth will be heard one way or another. A small metallic object is held up, a poison pellet, hidden within a tooth. It is the ultimate proof of a twisted corporate loyalty. The truth begins to spill. A corporate giant offered the Red Serpent gang a leash, turning them into hunting dogs for a new district. The interrogator listens, his face a mask of stone. He knows that in this game, loyalty is often bought with a death sentence, a microphone on the neck. They were never free. Every word, every secret was tracked by their masters. The prisoner scoffs at the idea of choice. For those at the bottom, a golden leash is still better than starving in the dirt. He speaks of his bosses, One-Eyed Jack and Jin Hwang. Names that once commanded fear and respect across the entire city. But the interrogator is finished with stories. He demands the layout, the weapons, and the location of the nest. Back at the facility, the medic searches for her wayward patient. Her footsteps echo through the sterile, concrete corridors. She grumbles about Isu's stubbornness, her concern hidden behind a mask of annoyance. Little does she know what she's about to find. She stops. Through the door she sees them, Isu and the mentor, locked in a dance of violence and sweat. A flash of something cold settles in her chest. She was the one who helped him, yet here he is, training with another. The mentor catches her eye, offering a smug, knowing smile. The unspoken rivalry between them sharpens like a blade. Isu remains oblivious, his focus entirely on the next strike. The weight of his ambition leaves no room for the drama of the heart. Far from the shadows of the gang, Jin Hwang lives a different life. Surrounded by children, he is a man who has found peace. But the past is a shadow that never truly fades. 3 men stand in the alleyway, their presence a stain on his quiet sanctuary. They come with words, but Jin Hwang responds with the only language he truly knows. A fist shatters the silence. He moves with a terrifying efficiency, a reminder of why he was once a king of the streets. They are no match for him. They bow, desperate and broken. They beg for the strength of an old friend to protect their crumbling empire. They plead for his help, revealing a dire truth. An assassin is hunting their leaders. The Red Serpent gang is bleeding. 2 executives are already gone. The fear in the messenger's eyes is real. They are being systematically erased from the world. Jin Hwang sighs, the weight of his choice settling on his shoulders. He asks for time to think, but the world is already moving. 3 days pass. The sun sets over a nondescript building, where a high-stakes meeting is about to take place. A woman in a suit prepares her companion. No talking, No touching the mask. Immersion is the only key to survival. Inside, they face the boss. The air is thick with smoke and the palpable tension of a deal that could change everything. A suitcase clicks open, revealing a fortune in cash. 1 billion won, the price of entry into a dangerous game. But it is the business card charred by fire that carries the true weight. A message written in flame. She looks him in the eye, her gaze unwavering. The game has begun, and there is no turning back now. Bo Hwang holds a business card between his fingers, the weight of his experience evident in his gaze. Little did he know, would be that he knows the start of his unspoken rules of the high undoing. Would be that he knows the start of his unspoken rules of the high undoing stakes world he inhabits. A true director, a man of real power, his eyes air narrow behind his grows heavy. The card so truth is calm and simple. His eyes narrow behind his shades as the air grows heavy. The truth is simple, yet dangerous. The card is a lie, a fake. He looks toward his guests. Dangerous, his posture measured and intentional. Playing a game fake of patience, waiting for the pieces to fall into place. The woman across from him listens, her expression a mask of stone. In this room, every word is a weapon, and every silence is a shield. Bo raises his glass with a predatory grin. He lives by a singular, cynical creed. Keep your enemies close and your friends even further. His mind drifts back to a different time, a time of desperation and shadows. Two boys, running for their lives through the narrow, cold veins of the city. Young Jin stands tall, his face bruised but his spirit unbroken. He was the protector, the one who bore the weight of their survival against the world. Beside him, a young Jack, the boy who would become Bo Hwang, clutches a stolen loaf of bread. A small prize for such a heavy, soul-crushing price. They sit in the filth of the alley, sharing the meager meal in a rare moment of peace. It was here, in the dirt, that the seeds of Bo's dark ambition were first planted. "I'm going to make it big," Jack had promised, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and iron resolve. No matter what it takes. The scars on his face were nothing compared to the fire in his eyes. He didn't just want success. He wanted to make the world pay for every moment of his suffering. But even then, a cold feeling settled in his chest. A divide was growing between the two friends as their fates began to pull them in opposite directions. Back in the present, the memory leaves a bitter taste. Bo mutters a curse under his breath, the ghost of his past still looming over his shoulder. He thinks of the mysterious number 21, a shadow in a suit, a symbol of the absolute power he has finally managed to grasp. The neon lights of his office cast a deep purple hue over the room. He believes he is the master of this domain, backed by the formidable strength of Chengdo. He sips his drink, a man convinced of his own legend. He wants Jin to see him now, to witness the heights he has reached through blood and betrayal. Outside, a man stands by a car, a silent sentinel in the cooling night air. Time seems to stop as the world waits for the first spark to ignite. Bo remembers the blood, the machete in his hand. The path to the top was paved with the shattered lives of those who dared to stand in his way. But the silence of the night is suddenly shattered. A door creaks open, and a sense of dread fills the hallway as an uninvited guest steps into the light. Death arrives without a word. A body hits the floor with a heavy thud, the first casualty of a calculated, brutal invasion. The cleaners have arrived. They stand amidst the shadows like harbingers of fate, their presence a death sentence for everyone inside these walls. A woman with glasses leads the charge outside, her smile as sharp as the blade she carries. They didn't come to negotiate, they came to erase. She moves like a whirlwind of steel and blood, her blade slicing through the air with terrifying precision. In a heartbeat, the room is transformed into a slaughterhouse. Unaware of the carnage below, Bo continues his lecture. He believes intel is the only currency that matters, the only thing that keeps a man alive. He leans in, offering a piece of gossip like a king handing out a poison coin. He thinks he holds the leash on fate itself. He mentions the death of a retired agent, a man who made an art out of killing. Suddenly, the air in the room grows impossibly heavy. The man in the suit clenches his fist, his knuckles turning white as his composure shatters. The weight of Bo's words hits harder than any physical blow. The illusion of safety is finally torn away. A panicked subordinate bursts in, his voice cracking with terror as he delivers the news. "We're being attacked." Bo slams his fist onto the table, the glass rattling like his nerves. His carefully constructed world is beginning to crumble around him. Sweat beads on his brow as the reality of his situation sets in. The hunter has become the hunted, and the shadows are closing in. Inside the office, the woman finally drops her mask. She laughs, a cold, melodic sound that echoes with the promise of a violent end. Her hand moves with practiced, lethal grace, reaching for the weapon hidden beneath her sleeve. The time for talk has reached its bloody conclusion. She lunges forward, the blade gleaming like a star in the neon light. Her eyes are fixed on Bo, filled with a terrifying, singular purpose. "This," she whispers, her gaze burning with an intensity that shatters his resolve, "is exactly what we came for." The blade glints with a murderous intent, a silver flash in the suffocating purple haze. The air grows heavy as the first strike is thrown. Forward, the strike is thrown, a desperate cry escaping his lips as he tries to protect what remains of his pride. But the world turns cold. A sharp first strike finds its thrown mark, calculated fury, sinking deep into his side. A sharp distance, the burning with air cold. First strike finds its thrown mark, calculated fury. The floor shatters under the weight of the impact. The sound of breaking stone echoes like a death knell through the room. Jack scrambles toward the light of the doorway, his breath coming in ragged, panicked gasps. He can smell the freedom outside, but the shadow of his sins follows close behind. She reaches out, her voice a whip crack in the silence. He won't get away, not after what he's done. She looks down at the wounded rookie, her expression unreadable. The mission is far from over. Despite the blood soaking his shirt, the rookie finds his footing. He remembers the fallen, and the weight of his resolve pushes him back into the fray. Elsewhere, the silence of the warehouse is shattered by a sudden, violent clamor. The hunters have become the hunted. Panic spreads like wildfire through the ranks of the grunts. They realize too late that the monsters have finally come home to roost. They point their weapons, their hands trembling. They are facing a force they cannot hope to comprehend. A single slash paints the air red. She moves with the grace of a dancer and the lethality of a storm. The captain stands amidst the carnage, his face a mask of indifference. To him, this isn't a battle, it's a chore. He questions the wisdom of letting the rookie handle the heavy lifting. But his gaze remains fixed on the horizon. Bones snap with a sickening crunch. The captain doesn't even look back as he clears the path. He walks away from the screams, his silhouette disappearing into the blue-tinted shadows. He has his own steam to blow off. The agent with the glasses stares down her next opponent. Her eyes are devoid of mercy, hidden behind the glint of her frames. A massive brute looms over her, his hammer heavy with the promise of a crushing end. She offers a mocking smile, a brief moment of levity before the blood begins to flow. She turns, her posture relaxed, baiting the beast into a fatal mistake. The hammer descends like a falling mountain, but she is already gone, a ghost in the machinery of war. She slides beneath the strike, her own blade singing a song of steel and retribution. Another crunch echoes through the hall. The brute's strength is nothing against her precision. She carves through him with a single, fluid motion, leaving nothing but a trail of crimson in her wake. The giant falls, his eyes wide with the realization that his strength was merely an illusion. She stands atop her fallen foe, her blade buried deep. Silence returns to the warehouse, heavy and absolute. Back in the corridors, the chase reaches a fever pitch. Jack runs as if the devil himself is at his heels. Grunts block the path, their axes raised in a desperate attempt to stall the inevitable. But she appears like a vengeful spirit, her daggers drawn and her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The rookie doesn't stop. He trusts his partner to clear the way as he focuses entirely on his prey. "Don't screw it up," she warns, her voice a low growl that cuts through the adrenaline. He doesn't answer with words, only with the grim determination etched into his features. Jack reaches the car, a frantic grin stretching across his face. He thinks he's won. He thinks he's safe. The engine roars to life, headlights cutting through the darkness like twin daggers. A heavy thud vibrates through the chassis. Jack looks up in horror as a shadow falls over the roof. The car screeches onto the mountain road, tires screaming against the asphalt in a desperate bid for speed. The vehicle barrels along the cliffside, a metal beast carrying two souls toward a final confrontation. Clinging to the roof, the rookie feels the wind whipping past him. One slip means certain death. His fingers dig into the metal, his grip tightening until his knuckles turn white. He will not let go. Through the sunroof, Jack sees his nightmare made flesh. The rookie stares back, his eyes burning with a terrifying intensity. Fear finally takes hold of the big man. There is nowhere left to run. The windshield shatters in a rain of glass diamonds, the sound of the impact drowning out the roar of the engine. The rookie leans in, his voice barely a whisper against the gale. It's time for the games to stop.